Second part of session 96. Let's talk here about the beginner's mind. Let's begin. This session is going to end with some conversation on the tarot, the archetypical mind, but not as I actually expected. As I had seen before, it was related to the tarot, but there is a conversation actually that doesn't yield as much information as I like to dissect, because it has to do with redrawing the tarot. This is something that happened. It's more historical than anything. Both ways, meaning history of the tarot and what it was, and now the history of the Ra contact and how they had to remake the tarot to a certain extent based on what Ra was saying. So we're going to get into that. The reason why I titled this episode Beginner's Mind is because I actually don't have much of value to take out of this last part of the session. And so I would like to talk a little bit on the beginner's mind, which is an interesting reminder on anybody on the spiritual path. But let's begin with the first question that I left last time. And that's question 15, where Don is actually talking about this, the redrawing of the tarot. And he says, I plan to redraw the tarot cards, eliminating extraneous additions by those who came after Ra's initial giving, and I would like quickly to go through those things that I intend to eliminate from each card we have gone over and ask Ra if there is anything that should be eliminated to make the cards as they were when they were originally drawn, before the astrological and other appendages were added. I would eliminate all of the letters around the edge of the card, with the possible exception of the number of the card, 1, 2, 3, etc. That would be the case for all the cards, I think. The exterior lettering and numbering. In card number 1, I would eliminate the star at the upper right hand corner, eliminate the wand in the magician's hand. I understand that the sphere remains, but I am not really sure where it should be. Would Ra comment on that, please? So, to give some background to this, through the conversation that they've had for the past 10 or so sessions, I believe, they have been talking about the imagery in the card. And Ra a couple of times have said, well, that's astrological, release it from its structure. You can eliminate this, eliminate that. So that's what Don is talking about here, the wand, the star, and he came up with the numbers. I'm not sure what the numbers and letters were around the card, but maybe he found it to be unimportant, right? So he's going through what they have talked about so far, not all of the cards, except for what he said, numbering and letters, which are in every card, but speaking particularly about the star and the wand and all of this, because they already talked about this. This is the reason I suspect now why they did a redrawing of several cards, but not all of them. I'm not sure how far they got into getting a more updated tarot from Ra, because you remember that Ra initially gave this imagery to the degree in which it was acceptable to the culture of Egypt, and then it was distorted as it's expected. And through these distortions, many things were added. And so Ra now is saying, well, this was the original case, this was the original imagery, and so on. And so Don is doing something like that, saying, okay, if we can, resuscitate the old tarot, and then let's do it. So what is Ra saying? They give a full instruction and say, firstly, the elimination of letters is acceptable. Second, the elimination of stars is acceptable in all cases. Important. Thirdly, the elimination of the wand is appropriate. Fourthly, the sphere may be seen to be held by the thumb and index and second finger. So that would be the middle finger, right? Fifthly, we would note that it is not possible to offer what you may call a pure deck, if you would use this term, of tarot, due to the fact that when these images were first drawn, there was already distortion in various and sundry ways, mostly cultural. Sixthly, although it is good to view the images without the astrological additions, it is to be noted that the more general positions, faces, and characteristics of each concept complex are those which are significant. The removal of all distortion is unlikely and, to a great extent, unimportant. So, yeah. This is the general recommendation of Ra to reshape the tarot as they know it, or as we knew it at the time and Don was using it. I think the cards are still available somewhere. I think I've seen two different imageries in book 1 and then the Raw Contact. I'm not sure. Like I said from the beginning when I started this conversation on the tarot, I'm not big on this topic. I'm not a student of the tarot. I've done just my surface research on it, and I can patch things up with what Ra has said over the course of the whole material when they talk about the veil, subconscious or the unconscious mind, and catalyst and so on. But yeah, more people are required to get into this, and for many reasons. But in any case, Ra is saying, fine, eliminate the letters. Elimination of stars is acceptable in all cases. This is strange to me because there are other cards that have stars and they're significant. I think, like in the spirit line, the 7 cards of the spirit, I think. So I don't know if they meant acceptable in all the cases you mentioned or in all cases in general. Like all the stars in the tarot are astrological and should be eliminated. I'm not sure. Thirdly, the elimination of the wand is appropriate, and how to hold a sphere. So the magician had a wand with, I don't know what at the tip, but the wand was eliminated and the sphere was retained, and it was supposed to be held, that's the redrawing of the card, with the first 3 fingers, thumb and the other 2 fingers, I guess, index and middle finger. And that they did. Then they say that it is not possible to have a pure deck because you can remove all the distortions. This opens up the discussion, or my contribution to, yeah, certainly there is no way to have a pure anything, really. Pure self, pure tarot, pure teaching. There's no such thing as that. And so this is going to mix nicely with my idea of talking about the beginner's mind, because that is the purest form, the purest form of, of this mentality, is just to not have any ideas of anything, you see. And whenever an idea creeps up, it's good to look at it from the beginner's mind again and not allow anything to form. So even here in the tarot, thinking that you're going to have the best tarot possible, just don't believe it. Don't think that you're going to have something perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in manifestation. And yet all manifestation is an appearance of perfection. So something to ponder on. Then Ross says that Although it is good to view the images without the astrological additions, it is to be noted that the more general position, phases, and characteristics of each concept complex are those which are significant. So without the astrological additions, the position, phases, and the characteristics of each card, in essence, is what's significant. And again, they emphasize the removal of all distortion is unlikely and unimportant. That to me is important because it says it's okay to live in imperfection. It's okay to live in distortion. That is the meaning of this reality. I am one who thinks that there is no way, like this is not the density in which you came to become perfect. You came to become devoted to a specific path, and that devotion is really what makes your life. It's not really seeking perfection, although the devotion is towards perfection. There is I would confess that I am one who have been invaded by these thoughts of, perfectionism, finding perfectionism, and whenever I can't, if I have an idea of perfectionism and it doesn't go that way, then of course I feel like I'm trembling because it's not perfect and it's marred, it's blemish, it's not fully how I expected it. But then again, that was my own arrogance to think that I could actually make something perfect. I can't. This is perfection, and I just need to accept it as it is. And for that, I need to have no ideas, just to appreciate it for what it is. That's a different story. But yeah, I'll keep alluding to this as we go through the episode, and as I keep finding things that are relevant. Next question. Don says, question 16. I didn't think we could ever remove all distortion, but some of this is very difficult to interpret because of the quality of the drawing. And as we go through these cards, we get a better idea of what some of these things are and how they should be drawn. And I think that we can improve greatly on the quality of the card and also remove some of the extraneous material that is misleading. He says, on the second card, in addition to removing the letters and stars, I assume we should, at the center of the female form here, where something that looks like a crook, like a little crux ansata, is, we should change that. Is that correct? So a crux ansata at the center of, I guess, the chest. But Ross says, we perceive an incomplete query. Please re-question. And Don says, I think that I should put a crux ansata in place of this thing that looks like a little like a crux ansata on the front of the female. Is that correct? Ross says, this is correct. So second card, this is the unconscious, or the potentiator of mind. I don't think there was a crux ansata, but that's what Don saw. Like I said, we have to look at the images that they were using and the one that we have now. But the one that we have now certainly has a crux ansata now in the images that we have. So he was thinking about drawing that. And again, I love the crux ansata, and I remember Scott Mandelker talking about how it was in the chest. And this is indicative of where the spiritual work begins, which is transcendence of the lower chakras or the lower energy centers into the heart. And the crux ansata being here in the chest, then that is definitely representative of what it is to I remember Ross saying that the crux signifies something, well, I forgot the right terms, but something that can be appreciated only through sacrifice. And I think that's the key word here. We're definitely sacrificing which is to me the real meaning of Jesus and his crucifixion and everything, is the sacrifice of this body, not directly or physically as a lot of people thought, but just the physicality of it, the idea that we are this body, the idea that we are this material being, and so we need to, it's almost like killing the animal. You're not an animal anymore, even though you are in the flesh of an animal. This is the it's a byproduct of evolution, you see, and it must be shed mentally, the idea that we are this, because that's where the key thing happens. When you abandon mentally the idea that you are this, something else starts to validate itself, a new identity, which is really that of opening the heart and knowing, let's say, clearer this reality. So again, I like the idea of the crux ansata there, and it's beautiful. I love it. I don't have much to add there. And again, this is going to be a very short episode. As you can see, I keeping it within the hour. The last episode, it would have been like 2 hours if I would have finished it. So little odd things that I find. Again, perfectionism. Speaking of it, right? So let's move to the next question. Question 18, Don says, and as to the thing that she wears on her head, that, I believe, is a bit confusing. What should it be shaped like? Ra says, we shall allow the student to ponder this point. We note that although it is an astrologically based addition to the concept complex, it is not entirely unacceptable when viewed with a certain feeling. Therefore, we suggest, O student, that you choose whether to remove the crown or to name its meaning in such a way as to enhance the concept complex. So, again, Ra gives a suggestion as opposed to an explanation. And a couple of things that we get here is that whatever she had on her head, which seemed like a crown, be analyzed by Don and see what it meant. I'm not sure what it is. Again, I am not the best at interpreting symbology or symbols and things like that. That's not my forte. And yes, they just suggested that, I mean, they didn't explain. They said, we would allow you to ponder this point. And I like that they said, okay, even though it's astrological, it's not entirely unacceptable, so it means something. So this brings up the point that it's what we add to the card. So for example, if we're studying the potentiator, which is really the card that we're talking about here, if we're studying the potentiator and we add things that have to do with the unconscious mind, and they refer, pretty clearly to the unconscious mind, then that could be acceptable. We can make our own cards if we want to, and that's fine. So even though the source of this was astrological, meaning that it had, I guess, some reference to astrology, it had a strong reference to the unconscious mind. So what would it mean? I don't know. Maybe that there is some royalty in the unconscious mind, some royalty in the sense of how we use it for emperor and empress and so on. Like there is something of a higher hierarchy, if you will. I'm not sure. I'm not really good at this, like I said. So yes, I guess something to consider for those who are students of the tarot. not me. Let's move to the next question. Don says in question 19, would Rob please give me any information possible on the ratios of the dimensions and the dimensions of end shape of the crux ansata as it should be made or drawn? Ra says, nope. So no suggestions here, nothing. Then Don says in question 20, card number 3, we will remove all of the letters, etc., and the stars, and I assume that it would be advisable to remove all these little cups around the outside of the rays representing the sun. Is that correct? And Ra says, yes. So again, we find astrological things added to it. Something tells me that the cups are also of astrology, and so not needed, and that's why Don wanted to remove it. And so now I think there is an aura around, like, yeah, the representation of the sun, of the logos, really shining out of the potentiator of, actually this is the catalyst. Is that, yes, the catalyst is the one that had the rays, and so not the potentiator anymore, the catalyst of the mind. So all letters, all stars, and the little cups, which are representative of the rays of the sun. I'm not sure to which degree, but that's what it is. And Ra says, yes, remove that. Next question, and I think this is the final one. Don says in question 21, in card number 4, we will remove the letters around the outside and all of the stars, and it seems that again we have a situation of removing the wand and putting the sphere in the hand. Is that correct? Ra says, again, this is a matter of choice. Though astrological in nature, this particular scepter has possibilities of relevancy in the originally intended concept complex. This instrument is experiencing some small lack of that distortion which you call the proper breathing due to the experience of your near past as you perceive it. Therefore, as this instrument has requested a substantial enough amount of transfer energy to be retained that it might effect a comfortable re-entry, we shall at this time ask for one more query, after noting the following. We did not complete our statement upon the dimensions of the crux ansata. It is given in many places. There are decisions to be made as to which drawing of this image is the appropriate one. We may, of course, suggest viewing the so-called Great Pyramid if the puzzle is desired. We do not wish to work this puzzle. It was designed in order that in its own time it may or it be deciphered. In general, of course, this image has the meaning previously stated. So, a couple of things here that they say actually is that, okay, first, that was the final question because Carla suggested or asked for extra energy to re-enter the body after trance and all that. So they had to finish the session, even though there was a small amount of energy still, but she requested that. Now, at the beginning, they said that it's a matter of choice to remove what Don asked. And again, we find that even though it is astrological in nature, the scepter has the possibilities of relevancy in the originally intended concept complex. So the meaning or the intention of it was still there. And that's that. So, well, that's it for that. And then at the end, you see, this is the reason why there's not much to take out of here, because even though they're talking about the crux ansata, there are decisions to be made. So the dimensions of the crux ansata, it really escapes me that there's anything to it, because I can't see it. but there's definitely something to it. And for the people who are interested in studying and researching this, I guess the big suggestion here is the Great Pyramid. Some people have done this, and they have discovered so many things. This is where we get into that information, which is, of course, kind of, it's not esoteric, but it's just, I guess, conspiracy theory type of thing, because we're talking about the pyramid being built by aliens and all these things. Funny enough, we're in the raw material, and they claim ownership of building the pyramid. So, of course, there are some mathematical ratios there that are important, and the alignment and so on. But we don't know what it is. We have been speculating for a while, and it's fun to speculate, and it's fun to find, things. I forget. One of the things is that it has in inches the. I think there's a calendar there. I don't know. There's so many things that I remember seeing and reading and learning about the Great Pyramid, that it's just a lot, and I can't remember for the life of me all the things, but obviously it's a very enigmatic piece of humanity, so I suppose it could be studied and more things can be found. I don't think they said anything else, but yeah, that related to the Crux Ansata, who knows? More clever people than me can actually go into this. So that's all we got for this session. I think this is the shortest episode that I've ever recorded. So I want to talk about the beginner's mind as a conclusion. In my own path, the most important thing that I have learned is not really all these concepts, not really all the coherent information about reality. These things have been really fascinating to me to a degree. Then I have learned from experiences many things. You see, I've had mystical experiences, I've had dark nights of the soul, I've had all these things that we categorize as experiences. And all of them have taught me different things, have shown me different aspects of reality and so on. But nothing really compares to one, again, I would use the term beginner's mind, which is very known in Zen. But in my own experience, this beginner's mind is a way to humble yourself, to continuously humble yourself in the face of knowledge, in the face of experiences, in the face of achievements. The reason is because our mind has a tendency, and we have been cultivating this tendency for decades. This tendency is to associate itself with that which is experience, therefore creating the ego, a false identity, a wrong idea of reality, of selfhood. And if we don't pay attention to it, it reverts back to its original state of feeling comfortable within the known. That is because we have acquired so much knowledge. I'm very particular to say this because I know that in my own experience, as reading The Law of One and reading other texts, but especially because there is a synapsis, you would call it, between, I'm going to say, knowledge and recognition. So you know things and suddenly they spark a knowing and say, I know that, that makes sense. See, this process is beautiful and necessary for all of us, you see? So there is experience and there is recognition, right? Just like experiences that are dark, let's say, they produce a different synapses, and it makes us feel down, depressed, and these negative emotions, because we are reacting to it as saying that's not true, and yet it is vivid in my life. The same thing may happen here. If you associate yourself with that connection, then you're in for trouble. You're in for the depressive state of the ego. The mind is very clever to do this because it feels comfortable with the known. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad for it. If it's positive, negative, if it makes it feel like crap or makes it feel glorious, it doesn't matter. The mind has a tendency to associate itself with experience, therefore generating the ego. The ego is this sensation of feeling great and terrible, of feeling proud and I don't even know what word to use, but yes, depressed, down, just unworthy maybe. These are the two ways in which it can validate itself. I'm talking about the ego here. And so a beginner's mind is that one which doesn't know anything, in which it simply is, and I'm not saying don't know as, oh no, I don't want to talk about anything because I don't know anything. But it's an internal thing that you have to keep in check. Notice when the mind is doing this tricky thing of attaching or averting certain things. And that is because it thinks it's real, because it thinks that's the way in which it can deal with reality. It is ignorant of that which is beyond, behind, around. I can't give a specific location to it because it permeates everything. And it's awareness. And you see, awareness has no knowledge. Believe it or not. Awareness is simply aware. It has no knowledge of anything. Only the mind has knowledge, retain information. And so a beginner's mind is one which is always humbled. And I'm just going to share my experience. In many cases, my ego, or this tendency to create an ego, has crept up behind me and possess many of the things that I have learned. And over again, I have felt this, it's like a warning sign. And I feel it in my body and my mind as, this is not you. See, this feels, you know it because of the feeling that you're having. It's a feeling of losing. See, that's the key word. You're losing something. I'm not alone in this. Again, I'm drawing from my own experience because that's the most intimate that I have. But this feeling of losing yourself, you feel like you're mourning yourself. There's something about yourself that you're mourning. And then I know that, this is an intelligence working in me, killing, extracting, pulling the weeds out of my garden. And it feels painful. It feels like I'm losing something. In the past, I used to react to this, obviously, within the ego, with resistance. And, I can't accept this. I won't accept this. And, no matter how much I resisted, it would disappear. Because once you allow awareness to awaken within you, you can't fool yourself anymore. And so you can only resist change. You can only resist that which is not needed. But once you have taken the path, it only becomes painful relative to the amount of attachment that you still have to this tendency. So this tendency needs to be worked, if you will, over time. And it does make sense that for the majority of us, as we awaken to our true nature, this tendency, which I said already, has been trained, practiced. We have enacted this tendency for so long. It'll come back. And it'll come back with a force. So becoming ever more aware and skillful at recognizing that will accelerate the process of liberation, which is really the word that is necessary here. Liberation of the mind. A liberated mind is not a mind that has no thoughts. It's not a mind that has no attachments, that has nothing. That is not a liberated mind. A liberated mind is a mind in which that tendency has been worked so much that even if it comes, it has very little force or strength in you. And like I said, the key to this is the beginner's mind, in which you are constantly humbling yourself as you recognize that tendency to try to grasp, to cling to things, whatever it may be, experiences, knowledge, achievements, and so on. That is, to me, in my experience, the beginner's mind, and how we can continue to nourish it. A mind that has no preference, a mind that has no expectations. It simply is. And without that, there is a higher intelligence always working in you. And that higher intelligence, like I said, shows up as pulling the weeds. It'll do it on its own accord. You don't have to be consciously doing this. You allow this. I mean, in Christianity, you would say you allow Jesus in your home and let him do the work with you, of course. I mean, you're always next to Jesus. You're not going to just sit on the couch and Jesus is going to do everything, but you will be present. And you, when I say you and Jesus, I'm talking about the higher intelligence in you, and you as the conscious mind just looking, allowing. You don't know anything. Jesus is the one doing the work. And again, I'm using Christian terms here, or vocabulary, which is, the separate self is you. Jesus is your higher self, your Christ consciousness, all of this, which is within you. Allow that to do the work, not the conscious mind. So that's my conclusion. That's my contribution to the beginner's mind. And again, this comes from my own intimate experience, which continues to be unfolding, and the results are just amazing. Nothing like having peace of mind, equanimity within you, with no confusion. It's one thing to have confused thoughts, and another thing to be confused with your confused thoughts, if that makes sense. Confused thoughts will always arise. Can't do anything about that. But to be confused about why there are confused thoughts, that's a different story. It's a layer that is unnecessary. And that's what we eliminate in this path. Inner work is about eliminating that resistance and that confusion. I have nothing else to say but to say thank you. Also, we are nearing the end of the contact here. Very soon we're going to be entering even sessions that were completely in book 5. I think it's session 98. It's all book 5. So we're going to enter a lot of territory that is material, personal material. There is no tarot being talked about, very little. We have 10 more sessions to go. So you can imagine in 10 sessions, we only get a little bit more on the tarot and the archetypical mind. And yet we're going to go through it. Since I feel like I have time on this video, I want to share that right about this point is where I stopped reading the raw material the first time. And this is because I saw that there was a lot of information that was not relevant to what I was looking at, but this doesn't mean that we can't derive many things. There's still good information here. So we're gonna finish it. We'll get to that. All right, I have nothing else to say, but again, thank you for following me here. And if you want to get involved with more of the work that I'm doing, go check the description on my Instagram. I don't have many followers there. I'm actually still exploring what to add to my Instagram and to show, you know, the type of work that I'm doing in my mentoring with the direct path. If you're interested, go ahead, shoot me a text, all casually. Let's talk about that. I'll be delighted to help you in whichever state you feel you are. All right, we have session 97 next. I don't know what it has in store, but hey, we'll explore it. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are, and I'll see you in session 97.